Hi, everyone. We're going to get started shortly. Let me just start. I was muted. Christalyn, if you're here, you can share your audio and video. Hey, how are you?
Great, thank you. I'm glad I figured it out.
No problem. I'm going to get you all set up with the presentation, and then just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you. I'll just be saying next slide.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, you're all set. You can join by video as well if you don't. You can just do sound. It's up to you.
Okay, now this is good. I'll use both.
Oh.
See, should I wait for the session to fill up a little bit or?
Yeah, so you can right now we have 8 people in. I know it's another session going on, so I know people like kind of bounce back and forth.
Okay,
So if you want to give them a few minutes, that's perfectly fine as well.
okay, sounds great. Hello. Let's see. I see a couple of viewers. I'll give it one more minute and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, I see a couple more people entering. Hello, hello. Courtney, how about I'll go ahead and start like 12:05.
But just let me know when you would like me to, go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Christalyn Solomon. I'm the principal and founder of Solomon Public Relations. I founded this PR firm based off of wanting to amplify the voices of those who had a positive message or, a positive purpose that they wanted to share with the world. So this session is all about preparing you, helping you find your purpose and the purpose of your brand and your product or service that you want to share, and then getting it out there, being able to strategically place it in the media. So kind of grab your pencils or your notes. You can talk with me in the chat session. We're going to be doing an activity, but just get ready for some real notes, okay? So next slide. Thank you. So by you joining us today, this means that you've taken the first step in trying to grasp your purpose. And for those of you who already have one, or you may be a veteran, or this is something that's totally new and you may have an idea in your head, this is your session. Next slide. So let's go ahead and get started and get prepared, because these are tips that I'm sharing for every girl boss, everyone who understands that you're going to need certain tools in order to get ahead, in order to advance your competitors, and in order to really see your gift or your product or service into full realization. These are some tips that are made just for girl bosses. So next slide. And I'm working with this screen and another screen, you all. So if you see me glance off, I'm still with you. Okay, so finding your purpose. A lot of us have a product, brand, or service. And, after we've come here and we've come to this conference and we take away tips for what we truly desire and what we want to do, the next step is to find it in our brand. So next slide. The best way to do that is through public relations. And so stay with me here. One of my favorite quotes back when I was a student at Hampton University, Scripps Howard School of Journalism and Communications, one of my professors used to always say, marketing is placing an ad in the newspaper, PR is making the front page. How can you make your product, your brand, your service, the real story? How do you make your purpose the real story? So next slide, let's get into some of the products that we're seeing, okay? You can use the chat here and talk with me. What are some of the products or businesses that you've been seeing booming online since the pandemic, since we've all, been forced to come online and sell there? Just go ahead and type in the chat if you have a chance. Okay, and while some of you are thinking, one of the most popular ones that I've been seeing that good friends have been starting for all of you fashionistas is online clothing boutiques. Okay, and so yes, somebody else just said in the chat. Okay, cool, clothing boutiques. Another one, next slide, that is very popular is makeup, okay? And the reason I have these empty tubes here and empty brushes is to kind of, drive this point home. If you have a product, any product in its shell, anyone can try to sell you that. But if you put a purpose behind that blank canvas, you can drive it home. So let's talk about a beauty brand that was able to put a purpose behind their product. Go ahead in the chat box if you can, if you see this, go ahead and type in some beauty brands that you know of, that you think of as soon as someone says, I need makeup, I need to, go to MAC, I need to go to Sephora. What are some of the brands that you immediately go to? And I know somebody's gonna guess it, so even if yep, okay, great, great. You guys are awesome. So let's move to the next slide. Okay, so again, taking the deep dive, making sure that your product has a message you want to walk away with, that you want your audience to walk away with. One of the brands that has done this magnificently is, next slide. Someone guessed it immediately. Fenty Beauty. And I see the lip bar, Mary Kay, all of these products, right? We're successful in doing this. So let's talk about Rihanna, okay? She was able to make her bottles and tubes more than just selling makeup. She was able to put a message behind it. And so by looking at the picture, can somebody type in the box what message you think she was trying to drive home? She tried to make it very clear and very simple for all of us. Yes, absolutely. It's for everyone. It's for Black girls. It's for any shade. Okay. One of the biggest issues that we had in the makeup industry was women going to the counter and not finding their shade. And it's a major brand, a major label, and no one was, no one was able to achieve this quite as well as Rihanna did. So let's see. In my notes here, I've got um, Fenty Beauty made an estimated $570 million in revenue within the first 15 months. That's less than a year and a half, everybody. Okay. So if you've got big dreams for your product or brand, the way to go is to put a purpose behind your brand. Um, and we know a main competitor was Kylie Cosmetics, right? Her brand is valued at about roughly $1.2 billion. In just the 2 years that she's been here pushing Fenty, promoting Fenty, she's able to make her brand valued at about $3 billion. Okay, so she pushed past her competitor easily, and how it is through, next slide, the message of uh, diversity, of everyone is included. Next slide. And you'll see that through one of her, this is a gif of one of her commercials. You see all different shades. Every time you think Rihanna, you think she could have anyone in her marketing. Okay, and so next slide. One of these, one of my favorite people to study and to watch. Okay, because that is something you want to do as a business owner, whether you're pushing a product or a service, is to study those who are doing it. And the message, um, like you can see, her vision, beauty for all, became our marketing mission. No one was to be excluded. And that's Sandy Saputo, the Chief Marketing Officer for Fenty Beauty. Okay, so stay with me. Next slide. So now that you understand and you take a look at what Rihanna has provided for her clients or her clientele, next slide, you'll see that no one is excluded, whether it is her makeup brand, right? Next slide. Whether it is her new skincare line, her lingerie line, okay? For anyone who needs a new pair of underwear, you go on the website, you're going to see small women, you're going to see plus size women, all curves, shapes. You even see pregnant women on her runway, right? No one is excluded. And so that she found the purpose of her product. So moving in, next slide. And I'm just pushing through because we spent a couple minutes waiting for the session to fill up. So just stay with me. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about another Black Girl Magic crew that I just admire for being able to, again, find that purpose for themselves. So I'm in the DMV area. The DMV stands for DC, Maryland, and Virginia, for those of you who are not from the East Coast. And so, one of the biggest things that we are familiar with is 9 times out of 10, we know someone who works for the federal government. And during a shutdown, the Congress is working with each other, right, to decide on what the budget is for our country. That's the easy way to say it. Now, what happens when they don't come to an agreement? They have not decided the budget, they can't figure it out. The government shuts down. And who does it affect? It affects federal employees. Now, I want to show you, next slide, and just really illustrate for you here that the situation is dire. A lot of federal employees, when the government shuts down, please understand there's no deadline. There is no, we'll open it back up on Monday. It's completely undecided until both sides come to an agreement. So this led to the birth of, next slide, The furlough cheesecake. Okay, and for those of you from our area, we know this brand because it was birthed out of a message. Next slide. Um, this message was one of resiliency. We've got two sisters, next slide, who were able to garner media attention around their simple cheesecake. Anyone at home, hopefully some of us, can make a cake, can make a cookie, can make a cheesecake. But what was so special about it, right? They found the purpose of their product, of their brand. And their brand was, we are a company born out of resiliency. We are a company who can push past what is going on and meet the need. So next slide. Um, because of this is how you get media interest. And for public relations professionals and our media professionals who may be in the chat, we understand that the media doesn't just want to receive a message from you saying, hey, let me on your show because I want to, tell the world that I have a cheesecake company or a clothing company. You really have to push the message behind it. And the good news about these two sisters, and again, I'm referring to my side notes here. The good news about these two sisters is that they were able to garner this local media coverage and also national media coverage because everyone could relate to how they were persevering through a hard time. And right now, in the pandemic, they are reporting that they're still seeing record sales because everyone recognizes them as a company they want to support that was born out of a problematic time. So keep that in mind, okay? Next slide. Okay, now let's get into some of the issues of the day, right? Next slide. There are Black women on the front lines during a pandemic trying to garner, attention to issues that matter to us, that impact our communities, that impact our fathers, our little brothers, ourselves. To see Black Bodies Under Siege, the DJ, she was playing Black Lives Matter at the bottom. It's been a heavy uh, couple of months for Black folks, if not years or so on and so forth, and really just focusing on 2020 right now. Next slide. Black women have been enduring a heavy mental health crisis. Okay. Therapists from around the world are saying, not only is the world undergoing a mental strain, Black people are experiencing it at higher levels. Okay. And so, out of that, next slide, we want to talk about a service that is trying to be provided to Black women, and that is to um, link them and with therapists who can support us during this time. And one of the problems that we're having is there's a lot of stigma. Next slide. There are people, women just like us, who are going to work or going to school, and they don't want their families or their bosses or coworkers to think that they're weak, that they're crazy, that they need special attention, because there's a lot of stigma that still surrounds receiving mental health support. So next slide. But one woman is trying to change that. I think the name is Dr. Joy, her name is coming up. She started a movement, an online movement, to bring together Black women therapists online. And she's allowing this to become a service just for us. We go to the website, next slide, and you can actually be paired with a therapist who is in your area. Okay, next slide. And I'm sorry, hold on a second, Courtney, if you haven't left yet. Okay, that's fine. You'll see at the bottom there, look at all of these media placements they were able to achieve. MTV News, BET News, Essence, okay, HuffPost, I think I see Black Enterprise on there. She is providing something that Google provides, essentially, not to belittle her work. Anyone could go into Google and find a therapist, but because she put a message behind it, because she said this next slide is something I want to give to the world with a purpose. And the purpose is destigmatizing therapy for Black girls. Wow, what a message we all resonate with, right? What a newsworthy story. And so this is extremely important for those of us who are saying, how can I push my brand, my foundation, my nonprofit, my product, my service, my online service? Look at these examples, okay, and learn from this. And if you hear me repeating the same line, as my teachers and my professors always just say, that's because it's important. So write it down. The girl bosses who are in this chat, or who are thinking about a new business to start, write this down because you're going to need it. Next slide. So, as you're developing your story, who will tell your story? Okay, and now this is a shameless plug for all us media professionals. Hey, if you need someone to professionally set up your event, you go to a professional event organizer. If you need someone to professionally present your message, you go to a media professional. Okay, so whether it's Solomon Public Relations or it's another PR firm or a marketing firm or what have you. You really want to focus on who is helping you to share it so that you can get maximum exposure. And so, lucky for you, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Uh, I'm getting ready to explain some of the tips that we professionals use to help place your story. Okay, so next slide. Let's talk about your audience. Have any of you, I know a lot of you are on the money, you're real good at this, but for those of us who need a refresher sometimes, have any of you considered and taken a step back and said, who is my audience? Who am I trying to reach? Okay, what kind of customers do I already have? And what is impacting them? These are questions that are going to help you create your story. Okay, for example, is the pandemic affecting my customer base? If I own a restaurant and I'm trying to tell the media, hey, my restaurant is open during pandemic, is this affecting maybe the elderly who are coming to your restaurant if you own one that I always tease my sister about Cracker Barrel. I say they have an elderly customer base most days of the week. So and she loves it there. But for example, if you're still open, how are you conveying that message to them when a lot of people in that bracket are afraid to venture out? Okay, so these are things to just be thinking about. Next slide. Okay, and then considering how you will reach them. So let's get into this savage media strategy, okay, and what makes us so savage. Are you, next slide, looking at radio, local news, magazines, Black media publications, okay? Which outlets are catering to the people that you want to reach? And even more importantly, which writers cover your story? Okay, that's a big one for us media professionals. So next slide. Thanks. So, take a look at some of the ladies that I've got here in my collage, okay? And I know this was a big gathering of Black Girl Magic for this empowerment workshop, but, if anyone else, please apply this to how this works for you. We have so many members of the media who are ready to share your story, but is it appropriate, right, to share your boutique opening with April Ryan? Is it appropriate to talk to Jamel Hill and Carrie Champion, who now have their new show on Vice? Is it appropriate to discuss, y- your run for Senate? Or you want to go to the media outlets that are covering your story and the writers um, who are actually, on that beat, okay? And you all can write that down. That's a professional term. It's a journalism term. BEAT, beats, okay? And that simply means topic. What topic does that outlet, that journalist share, okay, and write about? Next slide. So now that we discussed this, and earlier we discussed the difference kind of between marketing and public relations. Um, we really want to now give you a chance to understand what is newsworthy and are you newsworthy? Okay, so next slide, ladies, this is an activity time. Let's get ready. Get your fingers ready in the chat box, okay? Um, and just get ready for this activity. I'll give you a second. All right. So I want to talk about what is newsworthy. There are 5 tenets, okay? And so we're going to discuss them now. In the chat, somebody please type in a news story that is timely to you. All right. A news story that is timely. And it can, it can be within the past week. If you can't think of one, I know some of us we're watching the news every day, trying to watch a certain story that's very timely. Let's see. Okay, we've got elections. Yes. Anyone else? I know you all are scrambling here. I put you on the spot. Girl bosses, you need to be watching the news, okay? This is super important because what's happening in the world and what's happening to the economy is directly associated with what you're doing. And see, I hate that. I know that some days you just want to turn it off, and that's okay. Just try to stay updated on the headlines. Let's see, racial issues. Yes, absolutely. These are the stories of the day. So I'm so glad you guys are on it. Next slide. Let's talk about it. All right. Um, Boom. I had to slide this picture in right before we started. Uh, CNN projection: Joe Biden wins the presidency. This is a very timely news story, okay? And extremely timely because I wish I had her picture, but Senator Kamala Harris is now the vice president, the first African American woman to become vice president, the first woman. There's so much history being made. Um, let's talk about another timely one. I think we had somebody say racial issues. So, next slide. Let's see. Okay, yes. Um, Racial issues. Talk about this. We had a representative being sent to Congress now. She's the first Black woman to represent Missouri in Congress, and she was a major political activist, excuse me, racial justice activist, working on the ground um, during the Ferguson protest, and then she got into politics. So imagine that. What a story. What a timely story. Someone says the effects of COVID on small businesses. Yes, thank you, Tamara. Absolutely. Um, these are the things you should be thinking about. And your PR professionals, we're doing this every day. We're collecting news clips every day. But girl bosses, stay on top of your headlines. All right. I know a boutique owner, um, deluxe deluxe boutique. Okay, she is amazing, and every day she's watching the news. Okay, and you would think it had nothing to do with her brand, but she needs to know what her customers are facing. So that goes back to what? Knowing our audience. All right, next slide. And I'm just kind of moving us along here because I want us to get everything in before our next session. All right, so this one is proximity. Now take a look. I'm giving a shout out back to my area where I attended college, Hampton University. Like I said earlier, Scripps Howard School of Journalism and Communications. And so this story is extremely local. And I didn't give you all a chance, but go ahead in the box. If you could type in a story that is very local to you, and it doesn't have to be political in nature. It could be small stories like the one you see here about free COVID testing. Let's see. Okay, we've got 15 minutes. Okay, great. Let's move along. Okay. Yes, absolutely. That's very local. COVID is an extremely local story that any of us can relate to and pitch about. Let's see, Brittany, over 1,000 cases reported in Dallas yesterday. I mean, wow, like that's insane. You know, these are things that are hitting home. That's your Those are your local stories. And one of the things before I move to the next slide is, you know, a professor used to say, if a car crash happens, God forbid, and somebody's injured or, you know, is harmed in a way in France, it has not as much of an effect as hearing that someone was in a major car crash that was right up the corner from your home or from your job. Okay. Um, let's see. Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The deaths of unarmed Black men. Yes. Let's see. Marijuana being legal in New Jersey. Oh, that's very local news. Okay. So again, we're trying, the point of this is to help you understand what the tenets of newsworthiness is so that you know if your story, your product that you're getting ready to pitch is going to have a chance at being landed. Okay, we want to get those media placements. You can write that word down if you need to. Next slide, media placements. All right, let's talk about some conflict and controversy. All right, is there a conflict of interest? Is someone putting up a fight? Okay, is this something that immediately snatches your attention? Um, let's talk about Real Housewives star of Atlanta. She was out protesting, right? And look, it says arrested again, protesting in Louisville. That's big news for her. And I actually got to watch an interview recently where she kind of just described what happened there. But she was on the front lines, and there is conflict in this story because you know the racial tensions that are happening all across our nation, in these neighborhoods, and even tensions between those who were sworn to protect and serve, our police officers and members of the and other members of the community are clashing in a lot of ways. And you know, thank God for community relations. You know, we're trying to piece it together, but you know, that's important to understand. There is conflict in that. Okay, next slide. I want to go deeper into conflict and controversy because there's so many aspects, right? Um, hey, are there any other types of conflicts, affairs, entanglements, shall we? Ethical concerns, okay? Um, let me see. You know, we have to be very confidential a lot of the times with some of the clients we work with. So, broadly, because this is a pretty common story, I was working on a campaign where we had to immediately shift gears because someone had an affair with a mayor. And it was caught. A reporter was able to capture the moment um, where the person in question was leaving the mayor's home at, you know, a certain hour of the night. Okay, ooh, that's juicy. That's conflict, right? That's controversy. So, again, that is something that is extremely newsworthy. All right, now the next slide, I want to show you. You can go ahead, Courtney. Thank you so much. Doing great for me. I appreciate you. The next thing is how do we capitalize on controversy? Take a look at this sister right here. Talk about some Black girl magic and being up on it with newsworthiness, with conflict and controversy and timeliness, right? She's got a couple of tenets in there. She is a marriage counselor, and she was able to rip straight from the headlines. All of our discussion was on Will and Jada and their famous entanglement with August, right, the singer. And you know, while we're all chatting about it in the shade room, okay, she was able to say, "This is a major moment for me. I'm a marriage counselor. I can sell my services while riding the wave of a newsworthy topic." Okay, and because she knows her purpose is to repair broken relationships, essentially, she jumped right on the opportunity. And here she is with a nice local media placement. There's that word again, write it down. Media placement for her company. She's front and center. And not only that, and I'll try not to get geeky, PR geeky with it, you guys, because this is fun for us. But she was able to ride the hashtag wave and make her news story go further than just her local area. Okay, she was able to attach her news story to something that was already being discussed on the Twitterverse, like we said, and she rode that wave and got so much media attention, more than she would have gotten if she just said, "Hey, my local Fox 5, or I think it's 11 on there, I have a company and I would love to come on and talk about my marriage counseling company." That's boring. Okay. Let's get in there and attach to something that's newsworthy. All right. Next slide. Let's see. Okay. We're getting into the human interest angle now. Um, this was a really viral story. I saw this on Because of Them We Can, okay? A 11-year-old girl got a Whole Foods contract for her lemonade business. We would all love to be that 11-year-old girl, right? You ever come up with a great recipe or drink or product, and you're like, man, if only a grocery store would pick me up. Okay, this girl got it at 11 years old. This makes us feel good. You can put in the chat any um, stories that have human interest to you. They're not all they're not always happy, but if you can relate on a human level, all right, you're right on this newsworthy tenet. Okay, is your story appealing to emotion? All right, so go ahead. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that human interest. Okay, so the last one was a business score. We were so happy for the little girl, her lemonade. And this one, a doctor. She made a nice media placement in Black Enterprise, right? For becoming the first doctor to cure cancer in mice using nanoparticles. And a lot of us have seen this story circulating early in the year. This was really big news. Um, and I think there's even a Black woman who's spearheading the COVID-19 um, vaccination. So, what the question I want to ask here is a trick question. If you're paying attention, what who do you think sent this story to Black Enterprise? Because I'll give you a hint, it wasn't the woman. Try to zero in behind her. Okay, and if you can't see all the words, it's okay. But you can type it in. Let's see. Okay, I know some of you are like, okay, maybe I'm stumped. That's all right. So, the people who actually placed the story for her was the American Association for Cancer Research. Okay, and I had to zoom in myself there. Um, this was an organization that was looking for a placement. So, if you have a nonprofit, if you have a research company, if you have a PR company, anything that provides some type of service like this, um, you can also play stories. You don't have to say, hello, we're the American Cancer Research Foundation and we have some new research. No, you can actually profile your researchers, the members of your organization. Think about how awesome that is. Our um, our founder for this conference, she pushed the profiles of the people who were speaking in order to sell the overall message and the overall conference to help attendees like you find this gem that I'm so amazed is absolutely free. This is so awesome. Next slide. Okay, and let's see, relevant. Let's see. Okay, looks like my pictures aren't showing. There they go. Okay, great. So, is the story relevant? And this is our last tenet. All right, and I'm trying to leave time for questions. So you got 5 minutes. Great. All right. Um, is our story relevant? Take a look at what was happening. We have a Black woman whose organization is trying to bring attention to Black mothers who are dying during childbirth. Wow. Okay, what a impactful message. But how do I get it out there considering that there are Black women dying from all kinds of things and we're all competing for media attention? Um, how did your organization get in the spotlight? Well, she attached herself to a story that was extremely relevant at the time. Both Serena Williams and Beyonce Knowles actually were very candid, which they tend not to be. They were very candid and were able to share their horrific and scary pregnancy experience where they were almost near death. They talked about preeclampsia. That's a fancy word for high blood pressure during your pregnancy, okay? This woman who owns this organization was able to, really drive that message home by riding on a wave of news that was already being discussed and it was relevant at the time. Don't try to pitch your story um, if nobody is talking about it. You need to find an angle to make sure people are talking about it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We're running low on time, but I did want to leave a moment for questions. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed the presentation, and I want to give you guys a chance to kind of take a deep breath and ask any questions you may have in the chat box. Okay, take your time. That's all right. We've got like a few more minutes. We're about to close out here. Anyone have any questions about maybe how this might apply to your brand? Any stories that you'd like to figure out how you can get a attachment to? While you're all working on that, there's a company who was trying to sell voting shirts. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. All right, I'll get back to that. What's the best way to find a good PR company? Okay, a lot of business comes from word of mouth, right? You want to find people who've had good experiences with PR firms. Some of them are very, you know, brick and mortar. You do this, we do this, that's the end. But I really pride myself on being a PR firm where you get a whole personal experience. You're working with someone who believes in your brand. That's one of the reasons, again, why I started. That was my purpose. And let me know when my time is running out, you guys. Um, but yeah, absolutely. You're trying to help amplify the businesses and the organizations that had a positive message. And I wanted to kind of make an alliance with those people. So those are the type of firms I highly recommend, right? Or even freelance media professionals, okay, not just firms, consultants who believe in your message, and you'll go really far. Next slide. All right, thank you very much. And you can find all of my contact information on the very last slide, but I appreciate you all joining us. Thank you so much. I'll be back tomorrow on Sunday. If any of you joined us a little late. Thank you so much, Courtney. And you can send any questions to my email address.